Good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to all participants joining from different parts of the world. My name is Zehra Naqvi, and I'm the Senior Research Associate at South Asia Research Institute for Minorities, as well as Minorities and Women Rights Advocate. At SARIM, we work to promote right, dignity, and the voices of marginalized communities across South Asia through research, advocacy, and dialogue. Today's discussion is titled Ambedkar Legacy Lives, the Fight for Dalit Minorities' Right Today. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was not only the architect of Indian society and Indian constitution, but also a strong voice for equality, dignity, justice for all Dalits and other marginalized groups. His idea remains highly relevant even today. We are honored to have a distinguished panel of speakers from London, India, and Bangladesh. To begin, we have Dr. Lenin Raghuvanshi, a leading human rights activist, founder of the People Vigilance Committee on Human Rights, who has worked extensively on Dalit right and social justice. Dr. Raghuvanshi, thank you so much for joining. The floor is now yours.
Thank you, and thank you for the SARIM to organize very important discussions on the great human being. In India, there is a two important people. I'm talking about the South Asia, and especially the Indian subcontinent, is the Dr. Ambedkar and Baba Sahib Bhimrao Ambedkar and the Mahatma Gandhi. And Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar is so important because if you look at the caste system is based on the very violent system, which excluded the marginalized community, the Sudras and Sudras, and also the women. But the Baba Sahab is a person who gave the whole concept of the non-violence and how to transform through the resilience and through the means of the constitution, means the rule of law, which is the base on the human dignity, participatory democracy, and as well as also the inclusiveness. So that is most important thing to understand. And Baba Sahib Bhimrao Ambedkar also learns from the Indian history and Indian culture. And in Indian culture, there is the two way of thinking. One way of thinking is a Brahminical thinking, which is hierarchical. And the second is the Shravan culture. I'm always telling about that. The Shravan culture is the culture of inclusiveness, culture of the diversity, culture of give the human dignity. My new book already published, Kashi, which is discuss about that and the whole history. So the movement of the Kabir, Raidas, Savitriba Phule, Jyotiba Phule, and all Buddhism, and also the theological democracy and the spiritual democracy, everything he brought. And for that reasons, if you look at the constitution, he never talked about the secularism because it is included by Indira Gandhi after the emergency. Because the secularism for him is two ways, because in the world there are two types of secularism. One is the abstract secularism, what we observe in the France, which is totally failed, and one is the contextual secularism. So he also promoted the culture, and he like compassion, karuna, and other things. And for that reason, he converted as a Buddhist. And it is important. He also highlighted how the majority of the people, mean Dalit, Sudras and non-Sudras, belongs 25%, but the 50% of the minority people from the upper caste community, they control the all resources, knowledge, and everything. So in that way, Dr. Ambedkar, he is a pioneer who gave not only the hope. If you look in the 70 years in this country, we eliminate a lot of poverty, and also he is the icon for the all anti-caste, anti-racism, anti-patriarchal movements in the globes. So it is my small brief about this great human being. And again, if there is any questions, then I will talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lenin, for sharing your insights and powerful reflection. We truly appreciate your contribution. Next, we have Dr. Ashna Singh, Assistant Professor of Law at the National Law School of India University. Due to her commitment, she couldn't join us live, but she has recorded a message for us. Let's now hear from Dr. Ashna Singh.
Hi. I'm Dr. Ashna, and I'm an assistant professor of law at the National Law School of India, University, Bangalore. And today I will be talking about the topic on Dr. Ambedkar and minority rights and rights of Dalit groups in particular. So I would like to start off by thinking about what imagination comes to your mind when you think of the word minority. Now, the common sense understanding of minorities that would mean, usually it would mean a religious minority, or it could mean a cultural minority, and most often also a numerical minority. Now, in Dr. Ambedkar's understanding, Dalit groups or the untouchables, in his own words, are more than a minority. Now, what he means by that is that you cannot actually really slot in the untouchables into any of the existing minority groups or in any of the existing conception around minorities, right? So the untouchables were not exactly a religious minority, neither were they a cultural minority, and in some senses, perhaps, not even a numerical minority alone. Although they constitute around, let's say, 20% of the Indian population, but if you include even the other backward classes, and that would perhaps be more than 75% of the Indian population. So in that sense, what kind of a minority is this group of untouchables? Now for him, for Dr. Ambedkar, he argues in front of the South Pro Committee in 1919, which was related to the question of franchise or the right to vote, from which untouchables were excluded. Why? Because the idea of franchise or the idea of right to vote, not just in India but across the world, has usually been based on some sort of hierarchical order. So only those people, for example, who own property or who paid taxes or were belong to a certain gender group, only they could vote, and similar was the case in India as well. So that is for the first time when Dr. Ambedkar very prominently advocates for the Dalits to be considered as a minority group, and minority not in a sense of cultural or religious minority again, but as a social minority. And he also says that it's because of the social discrimination that the untouchables have been facing that has led to them becoming a political minority as well. So his conception of minority and untouchables as a minority group is remarkably different from the existing conception of the understanding of minority itself. And if you look at even international human rights law, the understanding is always to articulate around minority rights as cultural rights, as religious rights, some sort of group rights of this nature. Whereas for Ambedkar, the Dalits as a minority group are not exactly invested in the preservation of some kind of culture or in the preservation of some kind of religion per se, but what they're actually invested in is in transcending caste, not just for themselves but for the entire society. So it is the project of annihilation of caste that is of utmost importance for Dr. Ambedkar. And when he's thinking about the untouchables as a minority, he's thinking not about preservation of some kind of identity, rather is thinking about classifying the untouchables as a minority in order to transcend identity-based considerations, in order to transcend caste itself, and for that to happen across the society, because caste is a graded hierarchy. So therefore, the annihilation of caste has to happen from the top to the bottom. Now, what Dr. Ambedkar is also advocating for in terms of providing special representation rights for minorities, for the untouchable minorities in India, was, in my view, to allow for some kind of truth seeking. Now, truth seeking is an important paradigm in Jyotiba Phule's thought, who was another anti-caste reformer before Dr. Ambedkar. And so when Dr. Ambedkar is saying that it is not just representation of ideas that is necessary, but it is also personal representation, as in the representation of the person, of the Dalit person, which is important. Okay. And what that does essentially is that, so if there is a room full of people who are, let's say, bureaucrats, now only when you have different forms of representation and that's when different ideas will come to the table, and that is when people will be able to come together to resolve issues. And what that helps in doing is to also find the truth. So the idea of truth seeking cannot be left or to one community alone. Everyone should be entitled to some form of truth seeking, essentially. Now, next, what I would like to highlight is that in Dr. Ambedkar's articulation, when he's thinking about Dalits as a minority group, he's thinking about protecting them from two kinds of tyrannies, right? So one is the social tyranny, social tyranny which the untouchables experience from the caste Hindus, and the other is the tyranny of the majority. So in Dr. Ambedkar's articulation, it is the majority in a country, the political majority in India, would inevitably end up being a communal majority. And so therefore that may lead to another kind of oppression apart from the social oppression that the untouchables were already experiencing, which is why he demanded for separate electorates for the untouchables as a distinct political minority, as a distinct minority group. Now, Dr. Ambedkar, in one of his final speeches in the Constituent Assembly in India in the 40s, when the Constitution was nearing the end of its drafting, he said something very important, which is that in India, if we see, we have basically averted any kind of revolution or any kind of uprise by the minorities, and by that he meant various kinds of minorities, but you can also include Dalit minorities in that. And he said that is only possible when you have these safeguards for minorities, when you have different types of safeguards, representation, separate electorates, so on and so forth, and it is only then when there will be that kind of peace and stability. So in that sense, it is very important to have these safeguards, even in the context of international law, international human rights law, for example. The idea is that in order to prevent, for example, breakup of different states, one strategy that is always adopted is to provide for minority safeguards, is to provide for some kind of autonomy. So Dr. Ambedkar was very foresighted in that sense, because he is thinking about minority rights, self-determination, separate electorates, personal representation, and all of these ideas, even much before they came into vogue in post-colonial times. Next, I would like to highlight that Dr. Ambedkar thought of this form of minority representation as a way towards social transformation, and that is something that is possible through the law, in the sense that the law, and when the law will have entrenched safeguards of this nature, it can actually nudge the society to transcend these majoritarian tendencies or caste tendencies, and for there to be more social osmosis, for there to be more sort of convergence of thought and like-mindedness, because India as a country is there is so much diversity that it is very difficult for people to come to the table and to build consensus. And so therefore, if you do not take up enabling measures, then what might end up happening is that we'll degenerate into a hierarchical society. So that is what ultimately Dr. Ambedkar was thinking about. Dr. Ambedkar also thought about lots of other safeguards for minorities, which is not just limited to political representation, for example, or representation in jobs and educational spaces, but he had some very unique ideas as well, which I think should be worked upon more. For example, he gave the idea of having representation in cabinet as well, in after elections, when there's a political cabinet that is formed. So he suggested that reservation should not just be limited to one stage, which is at the stage of elections or the stage of becoming a member of the parliament or the legislative assembly, but that there should be representation even in the cabinet. He also wanted laws that were strictly implemented even in terms of private discrimination, when discrimination would happen in private spaces. So his conceptualization of this public-private divide is also something very remarkable, and you see some of it in Article 15 of the Constitution, which talks about, which is a broad general anti-discrimination provision, and talks about access to public spaces as well. One more thing that he advocated for is social boycott laws. Because he understood that the discriminations that take place against minorities, particularly the untouchables, is not simply by the state, but it is also by fellow human beings and by, let's say, businessmen, shopkeepers, private educational institutions or private employers, etc. So in that sense, he was very foresighted in terms of thinking about all these questions. And I would finally like to end with thinking about why minority safeguards, representation, etc. are important, because it is not enough to simply rely on change of heart alone. We cannot simply rely on the society bettering it on its own and then empathizing with the untouchables and any other kinds of minorities. So which is why law provides a very useful tool, a very, very strong tool in order to provide for these safeguards. But we should also not forget that the ultimate goal is to transcend caste identities, and the ultimate goal is not to preserve the institution of caste at all, but it is to transcend this institution for everybody. So I think Dr. Ambedkar's articulation around minorities, and particularly around untouchables as a minority, provides a very useful basis for us to think about the question of transcending caste itself and to take forward the project of annihilation of caste. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ashna Singh, for your thoughtful insights and for highlighting the legal dimension of these issues. Next speaker is Aruna Mahananda, a postgraduate researcher in the Department of Sociology and Criminology in London, bringing a strong research perspective on Dalit rights and representation. Arun, the floor is now yours.
Javim, and good afternoon, and my sincere thanks to the South Asian Research Institute for Minorities for convening this important discussion and inviting me to contribute some thoughts about the great human being ever exist, Dr. B. Ambedkar. I think it is both an honor and a responsibility to engage with the enduring of Dr. Ambedkar, particularly at a moment when a social, political, economic marginalization of Dalits and the minority all across, not only India, but all across the South Asia itself, is remain deeply entrenched and urgent as ever. So we need to understand that this Ambedkar intellectual and political project was not just confined to the constitutional design. It was a sustained critique of social hierarchy that my already colleague Dr. Ashna and the Lenin sir already some talked about. But also this needs serious interventions in the sociological structure of the operation. It's been happening since more than thousands of years, right? So I think for Ambedkar, justice was not an abstract principle, but a material condition. The contingent open, dismantling the very existing discrimination structures. And more importantly, the redistribution of social power and creating all the institutions capable of sustaining equality, right? And I think more importantly, his notion of equality was substantive rather than merely formal, concerned not only with the legal recognition, but with the actual capacity of how the historical marginalized community should participate in their everyday social, political, and economic life. And I think that's important, and some of the points already Dr. Asna and Lenin are already covered. But I think I just want to talk a little bit about the memorandum submitted by Dr. Ambedkar before the Constitutional Assembly in 1947, the state and minorities, right? And he was very straightforward, and he demanded that how the constitutional safeguards for marginalized community could be the essential document to safeguard their fundamental rights, and that's why he talked about the special rights for the scheduled caste, including how the state could guarantee the economic through the state-driven economy, which is completely absent today. That he was envisioned that how the state should lead the state-driven economy, how the state should run the industries to prevent the ongoing exploitation of the workers and the poor, the marginalized. Who are the people who are working under the industry today? Look at what is happening in India. And this is very unfortunate, even if we're celebrating more than 76 years of independence, but we don't have any such industry controlled by the states. And you will see how the poor, especially Dalit and marginalized, are facing problems and also getting exploitation in the workforce all around. And I think one of the important points Ambedkar highlight and keep talking about the proportional representation. Even if you see that other diaspora, they against the reservation, they against the proportional representation, they always blame on the reservation and Ambedkar. But you see what happened even in post-implementation of the constitution. You'll see there is a lot of backlog in all around, including education, institution, and job sector, and nobody asking those questions. So I think that's important to understand, because Ambedkar emphasized that all the institutions must be capable of recognizing and countering those existing structural inequality. It can be caste inequality, it can be, you can see the gender-based inequality, all sort of inequalities. And the state should treat everyone as a citizen of this country. But unfortunately, on the basis of their identity, on the basis of their orientation, the state are doing, I don't know how I coin it, but this is too much happening, even if we got everything to safeguard and to protect us, right? And that's why he wrote that it is the duty of the state to secure not merely formal equality we're talking about today, but the real safeguards that ensure the weak and marginalized against the tyranny of the majority. You are talking about since then, and look at this, what is happening today. Even in implementing those very ideas, the very constitution that's supposed to safeguard all of us being a citizen, because you always give an importance to the people of this country. And second, if you see that caste reality, anybody can understand what is happening all around India and the South Asia in particular, right? And he also said that the caste can be a global problem. And now you can see all the diaspora. I'm living in London, and you see that how caste become a global phenomena.
Yeah.
You'll see all the people coming from the South Asia, especially the Hindu majority, they're practicing caste every day, wherever they go. So that's why Ambedkar always emphasized that wherever these people go, even they will not carry anything, they'll carry their caste. And you see, and that's why it's becoming more important to understand the everyday caste reality. And you cannot ignore the fact that what is happening in the educational institution, you cannot escape what is happening in the selection process. You cannot escape how, even if the manual scavenging are criminalized, still prevailing in the day-to-day life of Dalits' lives. You cannot escape how the poor and marginalized farmer are treated by the states, and so on and so forth. And if you look at as I'm the scholar of the criminology, I can say that look at the prison statistic and National Crime Record Bureau. You will see the 70% of the on-trial population are Dalit and Muslims and the religious minority in India. And I'm not talking about it. This is the state reports. And if I see in the reality, then there is many reports that they are going under notice, and nobody cares about it. And we know how police deal with the Dalits and minority in particular. So there are many things where we can debate about that how the states are doing very vital, the very foundational of the constitutional framework itself. And the second, and that's why I think for me, I feel like it's not only Dalits, but also look at the Muslim and Christian in particular. I think even though they occupy a very liminal space, and therefore you can see that everyday life of the religious minority in India subordinated by both caste discrimination and because of this ongoing religious majority politics. And then I cannot kind of stop talking myself without highlighting some of the points about this ongoing Hindutva RSS push.
Yeah.
Look at the current regime the BJP is doing. All the institutions, including election commission, captured by them. And you are talking about the law will protect us. No, never. Because even if you'll see one of the interview I remember, 1956, Ambedkar doing with the BBC, it talks about that even though he came up with the ideas of a democracy, he's no longer brilliant because look what happening to the very basic of the people. And democracy should by the people, for the of the people. And the people are not even conscious of what is happening to them. So without knowing them, without making them understand about the rights and entitlement, the people cannot raise the fundamental question, even you are talking about after 76 of independence. So I think you can see also, unfortunately, the everyday violence and the moral policing in the name of cow vigilante, in the name of atrocities. And it's very dualism by this current regime of politics. You will see they're killing the innocent Muslim or innocent Dalits in the name of cow vigilante, but at the same time, their central minister, doing the beef export. Their central minister have engaged in such anti-national activities. And the state is no longer questioning them. And this is quite important us to kind of reflect as a scholar or as a professional. And I think one of the more important also, unfortunately, we're witnessing how that they believe that the people who really deserve the rights and entitlements, the states think that they deserve bulldozer justice. The very innocent people, houses, the poor and marginalized, Dalit and minorities, houses are getting bulldozer justice, even if they don't have any fault. Right? And unfortunately, despite all these problems, the person like me, the very first generation learner coming to all the way from village to London, and also the emerging people who are kind of questioning the very Brahminical structure, some extent they are managing to write something about social media. Some extent they are managing to come up with the YouTube channels, and they are voicing against the very Brahminical hegemony all around. And that's what is happening these days. They're targeting those individuals, whether it's Ambedkar movements, whether it's the Muslim groups, whether it's the students, whether it's someone who's talking for the equality and freedom. Now they're under the surveillance of the states. So I think that's why I believe that, that's why Ambedkar always highlight that political empowerment is very essential for the marginalized community. And that's why he always talk about the representation is the foundational to democracy. And this is not only the symbolic. Yeah. And I think in this situation, I just want to highlight that the consider is more important to understand that how the Dalit and minorities can enjoy the democracy by capturing the political power. Because you will see the movement of the Kansila movement, whether he established the DS4, BAMSEF, and later the BSP political party. And we cannot deny the fact that the way he did mobilize the Operation Unity in India, right? And that's why he always talks that the social justice cannot be achieved without political power. And the political power is the tool which all the marginalized community can claim their rights and entitlements, right? And without any representation, especially in the politics, we cannot think of any good or any effectiveness, whether it's legal or social reform we can ever imagine. And this is unfortunate to see, It's not going to happen. So I think I'll conclude in just 1 minute by highlighting that as a scholar, as a professional, what really we need to reflect, when we're talking about taking the Ambedkar legacy forward. I think one of the important things we need to think of the strengthening the existing legal and how I know this there is solid law, and even if you see when it's talk about the Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes of Atrocity Act is there, but what is the implementation? Even our people are going to the police station, but the police are not registering FIRs. Even if you will see the police are also fabricating evidence, So I think we need to think about that how we can think, kind of make accountable when it's come to the implementation of those laws. And also, it's important and unfortunate to say that how the Dalit and marginalized populations scholarship are getting curtailed by the states.
Yeah, exactly.
So the people like me and you will not able to study. And if you don't study, then you cannot question. Baba Sahib always talk about educate, educate, organize. If
Yeah.
people like me will not study, then we're not able to analyze what the state is doing against us. And then we're not able to organize ourselves. So without organizing movement, we cannot questioning the states. And that is something they're always ahead of, kind of dehumanizing and discriminating. And that's why they're able to discriminate us. So I think also we need to think about alternative institutions like you guys came up with this institution, right? So
Yeah.
we need to think about those institutions because Ambedkar also believe on the alternative institution so that we can talk about our issues and concern. We can make strategize like Ambedkar did. He came up with a lot of hostel for the marginalized community. He came up with own university. He came up with own press, newspapers. So I think we need to think about that aspect as well. Or I think we should not limit in the global world, and we need to build the transnational solidarity as far as the oppressed unity is concerned. So, so because he always emphasizes that even if after 76 of independence, we got some sort of equality in the politics, but we can see the inequality still exists in our everyday social and economic life,
Yeah.
right? So our task as a scholar, as a practitioner, is to resolve this contradiction, and to ensure that the democracy is substantive, ethical, and inclusive. And therefore, honoring Ambedkar, such a towering figure, we all know because he was there, that's why we're here, right? So we need to, if we need to honor Ambedkar today, then definitely we need to confront the very uncomfortable truth and the challenge the very Brahminical hegemony, the caste structure, and all the discrimination, structural inequalities in a way, and work effectively for justice, grounded in not in theory and philosophy and what laws, paper says, and all of that, but more in practice wherever we are, whether it's India, whether it's South Asia, or globally. Thank you. Jai Bhim.
I totally agree with you. Thank you, Mr. Arun, for sharing your thoughtful insights. Your contribution adds important depth to this discussion and helps understanding around these critical issues. Thank you so much. Finally, we have Mohan Rabidas, a Dalit human rights defender and motivational speaker from Bangladesh. Thank you so much for joining. Over to you. Please turn on your video to make the session more engaging. Over to you, Mr. Mohan Rabidas.
I like to thank South Asia Research Institute for Minorities for giving me opportunity to say something following the occasion of Baba Sahib Bhimrao Ambedkar Jayanti. এটা on করো। So for this occasion, for in this meeting, I also like to thank Dr. Lenin Raghuvanshi and Ashna ji and Aruna ji. Their speech was very much relevant with today's discussion topic. And I just, after their speech, I have nothing to say. I just share the experiences and the condition situations of Dalit communities, marginalized communities of Bangladesh, what are happening there. And especially how the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's interventions change the life of the Dalit community, how our policymaker and other academicians adopt his philosophies, and like to share that. I stand before you today as an advocate from Bangladesh, just to say we are living in the world and the communities I represent, the Dalit, and also I am from T community. And here, the Dalit community have lots of problems, but government is still trying to solve that problem. But if we say something about B.R. Ambedkar, what was his philosophy and how he thought about our Dalit community. In before 1977, the South Asia region, especially India subcontinent, the B.R. Ambedkar's philosophy was uh, not at now at present we are saying sharing these stories, sharing this everything in Bangladesh context, India context, Pakistan context. But when B.R. Ambedkar formulated policies, formulated laws, formulated his principles, he thought about all the people, not only in the India subcontinent, but also the other people. Because of my internet connection, I have to switch off my video because the internet is buffering, and I'm sorry for
Sure, no problem.
yes. And when the word speaks of caste-based discrimination, the conversation almost always centered on India, Bangladesh. What I had saying, Bangladesh is rarely mentioned, and that the invisibility is itself a form of injustice. Let us be clear: caste discrimination did not disappear when borders were drawn. It did not vanish because our constitutions, not only the constitution of Bangladesh, also the constitution of these South Asian provinces in equality. The Dalit communities of Bangladesh continue to face general exclusion that shapes every dimension of their lives, from where they can live to what work they are forced to do, to whether they are children they are to teach. Ambedkar called untouchability a system of unmitigated wrong. In Bangladesh, that system persists, greater than some places, less documented than in others, but no less real for those who live inside. Dalit communities of Bangladesh remain concentrated at the absolute bottom of the social and economical ladder. They are disproportionately confined to hierarchy occupations considered polluting, sweeping, cleaning, disposing of water, work that the rest of the society depends on, but refuse to dignify. Manual saving and hazardous sanitation work continue to claim Dalit lives in Bangladesh. City corporations across the country employ Dalit sanitation workers in dangerous conditions with minimal protection equipment, minimal pay, and minimal legal protection also. When they die in manholes, and they do die, and there is rarely accountability, there is rarely even a headline in newspapers. Dalit children face discrimination in schools. Uh, though the situation has changed some days ago, some years ago, that was very dangerous situation. But still now, Dalit students are facing discrimination in school also. Dalit families face exclusion from housing, from credit, from healthcare. Dalit women face the compounded violence of caste and gender. They are among the most vulnerable people in this country and among the least protected. And Bangladesh yet has to specific legal system protecting that is why we are claiming to enact the anti-discrimination law. Bangladesh Dalit and Excluded Rights Movement, Agri-Book, and other organizations are working for that to enact the anti-discrimination law, which was formulated in 2018, but not yet enacted or not yet passed. We are also fighting for that. If this anti-discrimination law passed in our parliament, then the Dalit people can secure their rights, can claim their rights, and become and protect their rights. The community people also have lots of problems. Perhaps no community in Bangladesh without illustration in intersection of caste, class, ethnicity, and state neglect. Then the tea gardens, workers of Sylhet and Chattogram. There are lots of tea garden, all about 160 tea garden in the Sylhet and the Chittagong division of Bangladesh. The tea garden people also are facing lots of discrimination in wages, discrimination in land rights, discrimination in health and sanitation, discrimination in education. You It is very much irony of fate that the tea garden people, in tea garden there are Dalit, indigenous community people, and other minority groups, but they have no any land rights. If they have no land rights, they have to face a lot of problems. They can't borrow loan from bank. They and other problems are actually their land are grabbing by the influential peoples because they have no any land rights, and their wages of people community is very low nowadays. Only 187 taka getting as a wage, and in all tea garden there is no government primary schools, and only 6 or 7 high school are existing. There is not any college where tea garden children can study. And Ambedkar, in relation with this Ambedkar's principle, as we are talking about him following his birth anniversary, Ambedkar was unequivocal without political power, social justice remains relative and revocable, conditional, and insufficient. The Dalit, indigenous community, tea garden communities, and other marginalized communities of Bangladesh are almost entirely absent from political representation and reservation also. In our parliament, there is no any reservation for the Dalit, indigenous minorities, or tea garden communities or other minorities. And there is no also political representation. You already heard that some days ago our government formed, but you can't see any Dalit representative, any tea community representative, any minority what marginalized communities representative in this parliament. It is very ironic, but we still now raising our voice to give importance of our Dalit women or minority women or other marginalized women to select as a uh, uh, in our parliament. There are 50 reservations for women. If government consider our women, they can select for these reservations, and we are also claiming for that. And when decisions are made that affect our lands, our labor, and our lives, they are not in the room, and they are not just subject of policy, never of. And we discussed what are the conditions of the lead, our tea garden communities, and also our indigenous community. Indigenous minorities of our country also face lots of problem. Lots of our areas there in indigenous people, they have no land rights, and because of that, their land are grazing, and they face lots of problems. Bangladesh must enact a dedicated Dalit rights protection law, what we are calling um, uh, anti-discrimination law, one with enforcement mechanism, with penalties and other independent oversight body. Advocacy for this legislation must intensify, and they think that the international community must add its voice to protect the marginalized Dalit and other communities of Bangladesh. The current workers must be given a living wages, meaningful wages, formal land rights, freedom of movement, and full citizenship status. Though we are citizen of Bangladesh, we have national ID card, but still now we're not getting all the facilities as a citizen of Bangladesh. And as a new government formed, our hope, our aspirations, our dream is much more to this government. We think that this government may enact Dalit communities anti-discrimination law. They will take interventions, initiatives to protect the rights of the garden worker. They will increase the wages of the garden worker. They will ensure the rights of the land rights of the garden worker. We think that this government may uh, take some initiative to protect the rights and entitlements of the lead minority communities and the garden workers. And as we are here following the occasion of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, And I once again say I want to say that there was a quote of Dr. Ambedkar. He said, "Life should be great rather than long." Very meaningful sentence. Life should be great rather than long. He lived with you. He spent every year of his life in the service of those the world had decided did not matter. The Dalit families of Bangladesh cities, indigenous peoples of the hill tracts, and the tea garden workers of Silat and Chittagong, they matter. Their lives are great lives full of the resilience, culture, and dignity that no system of oppression has been able to fully extinguish. On this, following the Jayanti of Dr. Ambedkar, I ask not just for remembrance, I ask for resolve, I ask for the kind of commitment that translates a great man's vision into the uh, life reality of the community is still waiting for the promise of equality to reach them. And uh, our previous speakers also said that Ambedkar vision, philosophy, and relate his philosophy with their country's context, India's context. And I like to thank SARIM for inviting me and the audience who are listening and watching us. And from my side, uh, I have tribute, respect to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, his life, his philosophy, his his thought, and his initiatives are very still now is very much relevant, and we should practice his principles not only in book, in theory, but also in our day-to-day life. Our policy makers also today consider to consider the philosophies and the principles of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. And later on, we may also should practice and also should talk about our great leader, great philosopher, and great reformer also, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. And let us change that together. And I am concluding here. Jai Bhim.
Thank you, Mr. Rabidas, for sharing your insights and experiences from the ground. Right, as we conclude today's webinar, I would like sincerely thank to all the speakers for their time and valuable contribution. I would like to thank our audience for joining. Dr. Ambedkar legacy reminds us that the fight for equality and justice is ongoing, and it is a shared responsibility. At SARIM, we remain committed to continue these conversations and advocating for minority rights. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arun.